tonight.
I'm an open-minded person. I'm not a bigot.
Will a battle over banned books lead to a Texas county closing all of its libraries? Plus, lawmakers debate a new plan that aims to save Texans money on healthcare costs, why some Texas hospitals are sounding the alarm. And later,
this is about the U.S. government. This is about how we protect and safeguard classified information.
The F.B.I. arrests the leader of an online group where leaked classified documents from the Pentagon appeared. Capitol Tonight starts right now. Hello and thanks for joining us here on Capitol Tonight. I am Rena Diamante in for Karina Kling. Here in Washington, the Supreme Court will once again have another say over abortion rights. The Biden administration today asked the High Court to put on hold a federal appeals court's ruling that allows a commonly used abortion pill to remain available in the U.S., but with restrictions. Last night, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals partially blocked a Texas judge's ruling that suspended the Food and Drug Administration's more than 20-year-old's approval of mifepristone, but the appeals court reduced the period of pregnancy when the drug can be taken to 7 weeks. Instead, it could be not dispensed by mail.
I think it's a kind of decision that's going to create mass confusion for providers who are trying to, provide care for their patients, many of whom have urgent health needs.
U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland said he strongly disagreed with the Fifth Circuit's decision. The Supreme Court could act quickly because the appeals court's decision is set to go into effect Saturday. After a heated public meeting today, a small Texas county is keeping its public library system open amid a book ban controversy. Dozens of community members showed up to testify. Officials in Llano County considered closing the entire system in lieu of returning challenged titles to its shelves. This comes after a federal judge ruled Llano County commissioners violated the Constitution by banning a dozen mostly children's books and ordered that they be put back in circulation. But the fight is likely not over, with county commissioners deciding the issue will be tried in court instead. Joining us now to discuss this further is Shirley Robinson. She's the executive director of the Texas Library Association. Thank you so much for your time. Public libraries in Llano County will remain open for now, but what's your reaction to how today unfolded?
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, the closure of a library should never be the first or even last solution to discussion about content of books in libraries. The impact of what was proposed and almost happened would have had a devastating and long-lasting impact on the residents of Llano County. We're hoping this was a wake-up call that the value of libraries is strong and should not be underestimated. We know that playing political games with our freedoms should not be taken lightly, and I think the response from the community and the decision made that very clear.
Are there other examples of this happening in history, or are you concerned that local leaders are considering taking this route rather than putting banned books back into circulation?
We have seen instances of this in history. We can look back, 70 years ago at the Red Scare and the McCarthy era. Hopefully we are not going down that path right now. It's important to remember that libraries do all sorts of amazing things in their communities. In addition to providing access to important works of literature, they provide workforce training, they provide access to broadband, especially in rural areas like Llano County, and things like just help, filing your taxes or connecting with telehealth resources. So it's really important to make sure that we maintain that access in our communities.
Where do you see the legal battle in Llano County go from here?
Well, the preliminary injunction and the ruling was that there was a violation of the First and 14th Amendments of the Constitution. We, see the evidence. There's still more to be discussed with this particular case. But again, I think it's a very clear indication of why it's important to maintain these freedoms and for the public to stand up and support their public and school libraries.
As more and more libraries digitize their collections, what is a threat to digital programs that allow students to download and read books?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And, we know that print is not going away. It's really important to make sure that we are fairly applying the same standards for collection development, for the selection of library materials, in our print collections as we are in our ebook collections. What happened in Llano about a year ago was that there was a very small number of titles in their electronic collection that were subjectively deemed inappropriate. And so therefore the entire service was eliminated for residents of that county, and it left thousands of individuals in that community without access to books if they couldn't go to the physical library and get those books.
And very quickly, what do you have to say to those in the Llano community and some parents who may feel that certain materials are too mature or go too far?
Absolutely. You know, parents have the right to choose books for their own children. In fact, librarians encourage it. We want parental involvement across, all ages of reading. But parents' rights do not extend to those of other families' children. Librarians place materials and age-appropriate selections in the library according to their knowledge of all members of the community to make sure that there's a wide variety of topics to read and find for personal discovery. And so we want to make sure that we continue to let parents and readers determine what decisions we make in our own families, not politicians.
Shirley Robinson of the Texas Library Association. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
The battle over books is also playing out in the Texas legislature. The state Senate passed a bill today by Senator Angela Paxton that requires parental notice when children check out books from school libraries. It would also create local councils to help districts ensure, quote, community values are reflected in each school library catalog in the district. It now heads to the House for a vote. Let's get a check on some other political stories making headlines today. A plan for Texas to bolster natural gas power could cost $7 billion more than expected. The state Senate approved the bill last week with the goal of building 10 gigawatts of on-demand power at a cost of just over $10 billion. But according to a new estimate from the Lower Colorado River Authority, it's more like $18 billion. Lawmakers haven't decided whether to pay for them through state funds or extra charges to electricity customers. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick touted progress at bills aimed at bettering mental health care access for Texans. Today, the Senate approved more than $3 billion for mental health facilities. It also focuses on tamping down on wait lists for court-ordered psychiatric care and improving mental health bed capacity and services across the state. The upper and lower chambers of the Texas legislature are poised to duke it out over property tax plans. The House approved its proposal, backed by Speaker Dade Phelan, to provide relief by tightening appraisal caps. But the Senate passed a different property tax package last month, which would raise the homestead exemption on Texas homes. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick touted the Senate's plan during a press conference today before the House voted. He also said the House's plan wouldn't pass in the upper chamber and reiterated his previous statements that he's not open to compromise.
And so we can negotiate on just about everything, but I do not negotiate on bad math.
After the Senate passed its plan, Speaker Phelan told reporters, quote, that should send a message. Some Texas students are bracing for state lawmakers to pass bills restricting diversity programs at public universities. Republicans in the legislature are trying to prevent schools from considering diversity in admissions and hiring. In a party line vote, the Texas Senate approved a bill yesterday that aims to ban educators from compelling students to adopt a belief that any race, sex, or ethnicity is superior. Texas Democrats argued, though, the language is vague and could deter conversations involving race and equity in the classrooms. Some students are showing their opposition to the measures by taking their message right to their peers.
We won't be able to get things done unless we have a unified front, unless we have an informed student body, making sure that we have a game plan moving forward.
The legislation is a priority for Lieutenant Governor Patrick and heads to the House for a vote. Texas hospitals are raising concerns about a bill that was heard in a House committee today that would prohibit fees tied to outpatient operational expenses. Lawmakers and stakeholders say that this would save Texans costs on their health care. But as our Charlotte Scott reports, outpatient clinics are worried they won't survive if they can't charge for hospital services.
When Texans seek care at an outpatient clinic like this one, They're charged a professional fee and a facility fee, just like when you go to a hospital. The first covers the doctor's services, and the second is for resources used at the clinic. The so-called facility fee is the target of legislation that was heard in a House committee Thursday.
It's just the hospital's payment for the services. And what does it go towards? It goes towards the nurses, the equipment that's utilized for a service, everything that's nailed down, the electricity, the front office staff, the medical billing and coding services.
Losses to hospitals.
Nortex's Representative James Frank filed a bill to prohibit outpatient clinics from charging fees for operational expenses related to preventive care or telemedicine. Preventive care includes things like annual exams, colonoscopies, and mammograms. Representative Frank says cutting out certain costs will save Texans money when they seek health care.
Actually, it will take money out of the hospital's pocket. That's the point. But it stays in the pocket of the patient.
But Frank Beeman, the CEO of Faith Community Health System, disagrees. He lives in Jacksboro, a small city 2 hours northwest of Dallas. If outpatient clinics are banned from charging certain operational fees, he says many would close, leaving rural communities without care that's often cheaper and closer than emergency rooms.
Well, if we lose the component of our payments that helps to support the facility, to support the physician to practice medicine, then we've just lost the whole system.
Beeman argues this bill would only benefit insurance companies who want to save money, since they absorb any cost beyond a patient's copay. While he acknowledges that some private investors who buy clinics do tack on extra fees, he says the problem doesn't exist in the public or nonprofit arena. Hospital advocates say this legislation will just put the good guys out of business.
It's so important to stand these clinics up in communities that really depend on them.
The Texas Hospital Association says no other state has banned outpatient clinics from charging patients operational costs. No final action was taken on the bill. For Capitol Tonight, I'm Charlotte Scott.
Still to come on Capitol Tonight, we continue our conversation on healthcare costs in Texas. How one state senator says he's considering the concerns of hospitals and essential workers. And later, China pushes back. Why a Texas congressman is facing sanctions. Welcome back. Continuing our conversation on healthcare costs in Texas, we want to bring in Texas State Senator Kelly Hancock. He's filed an identical bill in the Senate over hospital outpatient payments. Senator Hancock, thank you so much for your time. What prompted you to introduce this bill on facility fees?
Well, we just started seeing and hearing complaints on some facility fees. I mean, really very similar to some of the balance billing action that had been taking place years ago. And I think the fact that we addressed that legislation, people brought it to us and asked us if we could help on it. And so that's why we've looked at addressing it. It just seemed to be something that had been escalating over the past few years and needed a little legislative attention.
What do you say to those who we heard testify who believe the biggest beneficiaries of this bill are insurance companies, and why not let those companies figure out the policy?
I'm not really sure how an insurance company would benefit from a hospital charging facility fees. Seems like that revenue would not go to the insurance companies, but elsewhere. And so, unfortunately, in our healthcare system, that is where the discussion ends up taking the place. The vast majority of the time is between the healthcare provider and then the insurance companies, and very similarly on facility fees that we saw in balanced billing is too often they're bringing the patient into that, and the charges are hitting the patient, which really has very little to do with the negotiations in those healthcare agreements and contracts. And so that's why we're looking at addressing this session.
How seriously are you taking the concerns of some hospital groups who say the fees cover the costs of essential workers like nurses, lab technicians, interpreters, and they feel like they won't be able to cover those costs?
Well, I mean, there are charges and there are codes to address those issues. I mean, when you have a nurse, there's a code for that nurse. When you have test run, there's a code for that test. The facility fee the justification for the facility fee should be because of the need for that facility. In other words, for a telehealth visit, do you really get a facility fee charge for a telehealth visit? When you're going to a freestanding ER and it's not an emergency, is there really a need to charge somebody a facility fee that covers all of that equipment and those assets that the hospitals have at a different location? That's not what you went there for. And so the things that they're saying this would negatively impact, there's ways to charge for those charges. You shouldn't be doing it in a hidden fee such as a facility fee.
Texas hospital associations also warn that some hospitals could close outpatient clinics, which they argue are a lower cost, convenient option. Are you worried about that, and how do you prevent that?
Well, I mean, we haven't really seen that. We haven't seen that when we addressed balanced billing, which we were told the same thing. You don't really, again, there's ways to capture and address your cost of providing care. It should not be in some fee that you really can't explain very well and gets charged in areas that you go, well, that doesn't really make sense. And so, fortunately, the hospitals have come to our office and we're looking forward to working with them. I think they would prefer that we don't do anything with it this session other than do a study. And frankly, I think constituents and those that are being charged these fees would like to see something done rather than just studying it for another 2 years.
Senator Hancock, thank you so much for your time. We'll have to leave it there.
I appreciate it. Thank y'all.
Texas Congressman and House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Michael McCaul is being sanctioned by China. This after he led a delegation of U.S. lawmakers last week to Taiwan, an island that the Chinese government views as its territory. McCaul says the sanction is a, quote, badge of honor. Over at the Senate, there are growing calls among Democrats for Senator Dianne Feinstein to resign. They say her extended absence while she tends to certain health issues is slowing the party's progress. Karina Capabianca reports.
Senator Dianne Feinstein of California, the longest-serving female senator in history, has been away from Congress since early March because of shingles. Feinstein has missed more than 70% of floor votes so far this year, and her absence on the narrowly divided Judiciary Committee is blocking the ability of Democrats to confirm President Joe Biden's judicial nominees. Congressman Ro Khanna, a progressive Democrat from California, is calling for Feinstein to resign. He says the Senate's inability to confirm judges because of her absence could have major consequences as the courts hear cases involving issues such as women's rights and voting rights. The Senate, controlled by Democrats, has confirmed more than 100 of Biden's judicial nominees. According to the American Constitution Society, as of last week, 12 of Biden's judicial nominees were awaiting a confirmation vote by the Judiciary Committee, and 6 were awaiting hearings. After Khanna and Democrat Dean Phillips said Wednesday that Feinstein should resign, she asked Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to ask the Senate to allow another Democratic senator to temporarily serve until her return.
But we have to see if that's even possible. And I guess my question is, why not just take the step and resign?
The Senate needs 60 votes to temporarily replace Feinstein on the committee, or it can vote by unanimous consent. Republicans have been largely quiet on the matter. In Washington, Karina Capabianca, Capitol Tonight.
Still to come on Capitol Tonight, a suspect in custody, who the FBI thinks is behind the leaks of highly classified military documents. An Air National Guardsman in Massachusetts is now in custody after a trove of classified U.S. military documents were leaked online. The Pentagon calls the disclosures a criminal deliberate act. Washington correspondent Karina Capabianca has details of the suspect and the secrets he allegedly spilled.
The FBI arrested a member of the Massachusetts Air National Guard early Thursday afternoon at his home. He's suspected in the leak of highly classified military documents into an online chat room used by gamers. The Pentagon says it's now taking new precautions to safeguard who has access to classified documents.
It's important to understand that this is not just about DoD. This is about the U.S. government. This is about how we protect and safeguard classified information. We are taking and have taken steps to review distribution lists and to ensure that the folks receiving information have a need to know.
Heavily armed FBI agents swarmed the Massachusetts home of the suspect, 21-year-old Jack Teixeira, and arrested him without incident. Attorney General Merrick Garland said Teixeira was taken into custody as part of an investigation into, quote, alleged unauthorized removal, retention, and transmission of classified national defense information.
I want to thank the FBI, Justice Department prosecutors, and our colleagues at the Department of Defense for their diligent work on this case. This investigation is ongoing. We will share more information at the appropriate time.
It's believed Teixeira had access to the documents because he specialized in intelligence as a guardsman. The leaked documents reportedly detailed potential weaknesses in Ukraine's air defenses against Russia and other sensitive intelligence assessments. The Pentagon would not specify exactly how many people had access to the documents before the leaks were known. In Washington, Karina Capabianca, Capitol Tonight.
Hundreds of thousands of immigrants brought to the country as children will be able to apply for health care coverage. President Joe Biden announced a new plan today to allow recipients of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA, to sign up for health insurance through Medicaid or the Affordable Care Act. DACA shields participants from being deported.
They're American in every way except on paper. It's past time for Congress to give dreamers a pathway to citizenship.
While some Texas Democrats praise the decision, it's expected to get criticism from conservative leaders of states that haven't expanded Medicaid. And that's going to do it for this edition of Capitol Tonight. Join us tomorrow for the latest in Texas politics. Until then, thank you for watching and have a great evening.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. For more refreshing stories about your community, click the subscribe button over here. You can also download our Spectrum News app and tune in to Channel 55 on Dish and DirecTV to get live news coverage, weather updates every 10 minutes, and more. We'll see you then.